Hello and welcome. Happy New Year to everyone. We are now in 2020 and I'm here to talk Scarredlands with you. So, a couple things up front. First off, you may notice that I have D&D Beyond open. Um, that's partially because while I'm doing this little Scarredlands Q&A slash AMA slash uh, general running of my mouth about my favorite setting. I'm also going to be putting in some custom homebrew in D&D Beyond to reflect some Scarredlands stuff because I will be running a lot more Scarredlands on Twitch this year, and I want to make sure that my players can utilize the tools in D&D Beyond for those campaigns, and that we can use the D&D Beyond overlay when I'm running. So, by all means, if you're here, if you're in the chat, feel free to ask me any questions. Otherwise, you can also shoot me questions on Twitter. I'll be kind of bopping back and forth over there, just about Scarredlands or life, the universe, and everything. The answer is 42, not to spoil it. But while I'm doing that, I'm also going to be doing a little bit of work here on just getting that out of the way for one thing. Just getting some stuff set up for these forthcoming campaigns. I really do love. Hey, look at me opening more stuff right in the way of the window. We're off to a great start, 2020. No, I really do love using D&D Beyond, and I really love the functionality that comes along with the overlay for when you're running a game on Twitch. So I want to make sure that I'm allowing that. I think that's a cool way for people who might not be familiar with some of the character options to engage with the material in a low investment, easy sort of fashion. You can go through and just sort of click on the overlay and view the character sheets of the people that are playing. And as people are playing some of the unique races and classes that we have in Scarredlands, I'd like to be able to expose that a little bit more directly to folks. So the easiest way to do that through streaming, I believe, is to have these tools kind of in place. So forgive my digital mess while I do things I should have done on my way in. But how is everyone's New Year's? Everybody get home safely? Everybody stay out of trouble for the most part? I hope. So yeah, let's see. Not going out, that's a good call. I did not go out either. In my youth, I used to refer to New Year's and St. Patrick's Day as amateur hour. It was a good night to go out and get killed by somebody. I still have kind of that opinion, though it seems that the culture has gotten a lot more mindful about celebrating safely. And to me, that's what's most important. Be safe. I don't care what you're doing, just make sure you're doing it safely. Don't, trying to kill anybody in the course of your celebrations and libations. Before we get... Oh, excellent. Well, now that I never know how to pronounce your screen name. Yodan is here. We can start. So You'll have to forgive my horrible Midwestern white dude pronunciations of people's screen names and such. So before we get too far into the weeds, oh, that's romantic and terrifying at the same time, Matches Malone. Scared your wife awake just to give her a kiss. So before we get too far into the weeds, I want to remind you, of course, that Cult of the Blood Gods or Cults of the Blood Gods is currently on Kickstarter for V5. Let's take a look at it. It's just around $108,000 right now in support with 15 days left. If you have not yet picked it up, head over there right now. Back it for like $5, I think. Get your access to the manuscript. Check it out. Give it a read. Lots of incredible stuff going on. Big developments with the Clan of Death, the Hakata. And I think even if you're, maybe playing some of the older editions, I think the setting material that's in this is going to be super dope. But obviously, having these introductions into these is also very cool for 5e. It'll be the first place that some of these bloodlines, who are all now members of the Hakata, will be seen in 5th edition. So lots of fun. Yes, Kiltman, our auto mod is sometimes a little bit more aggressive than it needs to be. But yeah, definitely go back. Cults of the Blood Gods. There's more than one of them. There's a lot of them. It's not just your Clan of Death. There's, Church of Cain and Worshippers of Lilith and all sorts of fun stuff that you can get in there. So definitely go check it out. And, if you're on the fence about it, if you're on the fence about 5e, or you're on the fence about whether or not this material is going to be useful in your campaign, throw $5 at it, check out the manuscript, and see if it's up your alley. It's a $5 investment. And then you can always up your support at a later date to get the full, beautiful print version. What else do I want to talk about? So, we just put out the release roundup for December. Lots and lots and lots of Trinity Continuum has come out, which is awesome. I happen to be a huge fan of that setting, and it is wonderful to see it now out in the wild, out in stores. Should be at your friendly local game shop, and if it's not, you should ask them to get it from their distributor, because it is available. Now, let's see. We got Matches Malone says, I want to get back into VTM, but I haven't read 5e just yet. It's a good read. It's a very cool system. I really like the hunger mechanic. I think it's a game changer, and I think it captures something that Vampire has never quite captured before, in the sense of communicating what the beast really is. Let's see. Definitely, if you've got a copy, read it. If you haven't got a copy, get a copy. I think you can add on a copy at the Cults of the Blood Gods Kickstarter. Yoden, that's what we're going to go with from now on. What's the name of your high elf character when you started EverQuest? Ooh, EverQuest. That's some old school. Gotcha. That's fair. That makes sense. I'll allow it. So bringing things back into the realm of Scarred Lands, I do want to remind everyone that we have the first of many forthcoming open playtests, I just shared the link in the chat of some new Scarredlands material. 2020 is going to be a pretty big year for us. There's a lot rolling out with Vigil Watch and Yugman's Guide to Gelsped. And so as that's rolling out, we're going to be doing some open development, bringing a few things out for people to check out ahead of time, for people to give us their feedback on some things that we want to really make sure that we nail appropriately and that we really want to make sure work very well. The current playtest material covers a revised Hollow Legionnaire, which is very dear to my heart. They are probably my favorite playable race in Scarredlands. I know you're not supposed to have a favorite kid, but they're kind of my favorite playable race in there. And so I want to make sure that they get their propers. So any feedback that you might have on those, you can go over to that blog that I just posted in the chat. It's in the open development section on the Onyx Path website if you're not watching live. And you can head in there and hit open development, go to the Scarredlands stuff. You can download the document. It's got the Hollow Legionnaire revised race in it, as well as the Gorgard fighter martial archetype. And there's a link to a survey included where you can sort of give us your feedback. Let us know what's working, what's not working. There's a place where you can write in some commentary to sort of expand on your thoughts and let us know what you think and how you feel. Kiltman, I think you need all those things too. I would agree wholeheartedly. All right, so let's get into, while I'm sitting here rambling about all of our stuff, let's get into why we're actually here. This here is the homebrew creation section on D&D Beyond. If you're not familiar with it, you can use homebrew creations even with the free D&D Beyond account, so you don't even need to have a subscription or a master account or anything like that. Everybody can do this. You just have to either log in with your Twitch or log in. Now you can log in with your Gmail, I think. And so you can go into Create A, and it lets you add backgrounds, feats, magic items, monsters, races, spells, subclasses. So almost everything that you need to be able to customize your experience to represent Scarredlands. There are a few items that aren't in here, unfortunately, that you just have to sort of do in the character sheet, and I can maybe show you how to do that depending on how much time we take yapping and whether or not I get to it. Like weapons, there's no way to create a custom weapon on the back end. You have to do it in the character sheet. Languages are another place where it's very difficult to build custom. You can do it, but you wind up with extra languages, so it's just something you have to kind of be aware of. But for the most part, this tool allows you to build your stuff out and use it with your group. Now you'll notice a lot of my homebrew in here is listed as private, never submitted. And that's because you can submit your homebrew for public use for other members of the community to use, but you can't do that with copyrighted content such as the stuff from Scarredlands. You can do it if you're making your own homebrew, like you have your own race you came up with, your own class you came up with. That's fine. You can throw that stuff up there and let everybody use it. But when you're entering in something, from Skylands or any other third-party 5e publisher, you have to just keep it private. But when it's private, if you are in a shared campaign with someone, they get to view your private homebrews as well. So while I'm rambling, does anybody have any questions about Scarred Lands? Complaints? Praises that they wish to bestow upon me while I'm figuring out where we're going to take this here? Let's see. I think we're going to look through races because I know I need to build out some of the Scarred Lands races still. So you'll notice some of these are listed as a subrace. It builds out each subrace as a separate entry, which can be a little annoying on this side, but it makes a lot more sense when you're in the character builder. You can see here, one of the things that was interesting, I've already got the Asathi built out. In Scarred Lands, there's a couple of races where you get some ability score choices that do not fall in line with the ability score choices that are presented in any pre-existing 5e material. So those are not programmed into D&D Beyond. So in order to make those choices function, I've had to build them out as separate subclasses. So that's something that you have to do a little bit to sort of tweak it and make it work. Let's see, I'm checking out just a couple comments in the chat. You have made an awesome thing that I get to watch unfold every single week. It's amazing, and I love it every time the Devils get to roll. The Devil's Luck gaming crew is who Keltman is referring to, and I love watching them play too. I wish I could take any credit whatsoever for the amazing show that they put on and the amazing world that Connery has built. But I mean, they've been going since long before I had this gig, and Connery's an amazing storyteller, and they're all amazing players. So I would love to take some of that credit, but it's really all on them for being so cool. Fortunately, I don't think I'm telling stories out of school here. They've been very cool about helping out with some play tests as well on the stream. So I don't know if you've been watching recently, but like there have been some inclusions of Tritons in Pirates of Bloodwater lately. Spoilers. That's playtest material that will be included in Yugman's Guide to Gelsped. So there's one piece of news for you. When you get Yugman's Guide to Gelsped, which you should be picking up very soon, we'll start releasing hopefully by very soon. I shouldn't give you a date because we don't do those at Onyx Path, but very soon, sooner than you think, you will be able to get your hands on the first portion of Yugman's Guide to Gelsped. And the way that we're rolling those out are actually very cool too, because there are two major products coming up for Scarred Lands. You got Yugman's Guide to Gelsped, you've got Vigil Watch, and each are being rolled out in a subscription model with a monthly release, and then they'll be bundled at the end. So if you know you're going to get the whole thing, you can just pick up the subscription. You'll get everything as it comes out. No worries. You don't have to worry about tracking it down when the new one comes out. It's just going to pop right into your account at Drive-Thru RPG. It's no hassle. It's a very cool way to pick it up. You can look at it piecemeal, month by month, and say, "Oh, I like this piece. Maybe I don't like this piece." That's, I think, ideal for people who maybe are running other 5e games and looking for some new material to incorporate into their campaign, that maybe are just trying to test the waters, particularly the Blood Sea water of the Scarred Lands. So you have that option as well, or you can just pick up the whole thing as a bundle when it comes out. But you don't want to wait for that. That's gonna be a while. It's gonna take some time to roll all this out because there's a ton of material. Oh, hey, hi Sebastian. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining this crazy Twitch thing. I appreciate you being here. Yeah, so short story long, the Devil's Luck Gaming folks, who you can watch on their channel or here on Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, are spectacular. They put on an amazing show in full regalia with the most beautiful map of Gelspad you will ever see hanging in the background. And they're doing some playtesting, so you can see some of the stuff that's coming up in Yugman's on their show. Connery is also going to be doing some writing on Scarred Lands, but it's for a book I can't really talk too much about, except to let you know that it exists. So let's see what's next. We got Matches Malone's telling me, enjoying playing Manticora, fun race. Hope you're doing it justice. The Manticora are a blast. I really like them. I really like the... Hey, look at that, Manticora. Let's bring that up and we'll look at what I've got here. Yeah, see, so I've built them off of on the skeleton of the Tabaxi because it's easy to. But yeah, so the Manticora are one of my favorite races as well, and I mean, see, I say that a lot. I love all the playable races that are in the Scarred Lands Player's Guide. What I love about the Manticora is the fact that they have this identity that's tied very deeply into who they were during the Divine War and how that has needed to change and what that change is going to look like for them. And that's something that we're getting to explore in Vigil Watch. There will be a section of Vigil Watch that really delves into what are the Manticora doing as a culture to sort of get past these various stereotypes that they've experienced, but also just their own past, their own, you know, the blood that's on their claws, one might say. So yeah, yeah, I really love the Manticora. They're a lot of fun. Yeah, Calastia is a nightmare. I have opinions on Calastia. They make the best bad guys, that's for sure. The Calastians do. I would imagine it's very culture shocky to be a Manticora in Calastia. It's not a nice place. And that's an interesting thing too, like to tackle from a from the perspective of a writer, right? Calastia makes for an incredible villain, but they're so, given like the climate of the world right now, I just so want to write an adventure that burns the place to the ground, if that makes sense. But that's what you can do. That's what you can do with your Scarred Lands game. You go pick up Scarred Lands core book, and you run an adventure, and you burn Calastia to the ground. That is what I recommend. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Most of the races in Scarred Lands are rebuilding themselves. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to tackle in Vigil Watch, is to look at some of these species and that maybe haven't got as much limelight so far. If you look at the Ironbred, for example, right? The Ironbred have a very limited amount of coverage in the Scarred Lands core book. I think there's probably 5 pages, maybe if that, dedicated to the Ironbred. So that was one of the things that we talked about when we were discussing Vigil Watch, was getting a place where we could have exploration of these races that they're not that fleshed out, and start that process in such a way that we're not clipping the wings of GMs who want to explore that world building aspect, right? So like, we want to give you enough tools in the sections of Vigil Watch to deal with the Manticora and the Ironbred specifically. We want to give you enough tools that you have a good, firm grasp of kind of who they are at the start of this transition, and several hooks that you can dig into that will let you sort of take that and spin it off into the direction that you want to spin it off to, and while giving you kind of that same freedom that you have, where you can really dictate, like, how is this going to fit in with the rest of the world? How is this going to fit in with my vision of the campaign? And obviously, of course, like anything, golden rule applies. Keep what you like, ignore the rest. But let's see. Colastians are peace lovers. Yes. In a very Ultron sort of sense, I suppose. Yeah. If you kill everything that opposes you, you have peace. Yeah, they're just monsters. They're just monsters. Worst monsters in Scarred Lands, bar none. Forget the Titans. Forget the Titan spawn. It's humans. All right. Let's see. I look forward to watching Matches Malone has said, "You may have your wish, Travis. Our party hates the Colastians." Well, good. I look forward to watching you burn the place to the ground. Yoden, looks like I need that book. Which book? Both books? You need Vigil Watch, and you need Yugman's Guide to Gelspad. They're both coming out very soon. They'll be coming out. The subscriptions will be opening, and the first segments released in a alternating bi-monthly pattern. right? So the first one, let's just say for argument's sake, if the first one was to come out in January, it would be the let's say it was Youngman's Guide, just supposing. The first section of that would come out, and then the first section of Vigil Watch would come out in February, and then Youngman's in March, Vigil Watch in April, so on and so forth. So there you go. Oh, Black Plague, I'm sorry, our Nightbot got a little bit saucy with you because of all your patrons, or all your patrons. Woo! All your periods. Sorry for looking at multiple parts of the screen at the same time. Let's see. Travis, didn't you talk to Connery about a Hollow Legionnaire before? Yeah, I did. Very much so. Are they similar to the Warforged? Sorta. There are similarities, one could suppose, but they're very surface. If you look at them from a very, very, very far distance on a dark night, yes, they're similar. They are both created beings. They are sort of, again, the Hollow Legionnaires are pulled from the souls of the living, okay, or the souls that were once living, I should say. When a Hollow Legionnaire is created, they come from like a warrior who has fallen, someone who once served a high ideal of justice or honor. And these souls are pulled into the Gleaming Valley, into one of the spires that were built by the Hollow Knights. And there's a big lore dump I can give you on the Hollow Knights, which I will happily go into once I get through this so I don't get sidetracked. The type of soul you were determines what spire you get pulled into. So each spire kind of has its own specialty, which is why in the playtest we've broken them out as sub-races, because I felt that mechanically that probably represented them better than having them be like feats or something along those lines. And so you come back and you've got like these vague sort of sensations, impressions, not really memories, but enough that it gives you a couple of system benefits of connections to your previous life. And you really get to decide like how much that affects you. So it can be a driving force where you're like, oh, I need to find out who I was. Or it can be, as it is for most Hollow Legionnaires, who I was doesn't really matter. What matters is who I am. But that's the lore of it. System-wise, you are a spectral being that is bound into a suit of armor. And that gives you certain benefits that sort of lean closer to being a construct than being undead. You can't be like turned, for example. Yes, it's very RoboCop. Absolutely very RoboCop. And I love it so much. But yeah, so there are also a few downsides. You're slightly translucent and a little bit luminescent, so it's harder to be sneaky in the dark. You can bind yourself to different pieces of armor, so if you come across, like, say, this awesome suit of magical plate mail that you want, you can attune it and bind yourself to it over the course of a rest, just like anybody else. And each Legionnaire has kind of this personal pattern. This is something that you'd asked about, the similarities of the Warforged. This is a little similar to the, I can never remember the name of the symbol on a Warforged, but the Hollow Legionnaires each have a personal pattern that imprints itself on their armor when they bind to it, and then when they unbind it, goes away. So yeah, those are basically the similarities. They're both constructs, and they both have personalized embroidery. Other than that, they're very different creatures. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just saw Sebastian said Warforged are more like mechanical creations versus Hollow Legionnaires being more spiritual-based Frankensteinish things. I mean, they're not. Yes, in the sense that they're returned from beyond. No, they are not composite creatures, though. I just want to make sure that that's clear to everybody. You are one soul. You're one soul that had one life. That doesn't. I said the vast majority of them, that previous life maybe doesn't matter so much because you are who you are now. But you could play a Hollow Legionnaire whose hook was, I'm going to go cross Gelspad and find out who I was. Somebody asked for a lore dump, and I promised one. So, the reason the Hollow Legionnaires came to be, the Hollow Legionnaires are the newest race in the Scarredlands Player's Guide. And the reason the Hollow Legionnaires came to be was because during the Divine War, Corian used a series of servants called the Hollow Knights. These were basically, imagine animated armors that were paladins. Okay, so there's just super devout, super tenacious, and super holy in the service of Corian the Avenger. And they served very well during the Divine War. Need water for this. So, when the Divine War was over, as a reward for their service, Corian granted them the Gleaming Valley to be a home for them. And so the Gleaming Valley is kind of the one spot on Gelspad that didn't get just horrendously fucked up during the Divine War. It's as close to what Gelspad was beforehand, which was something of a paradise, as you're likely to find. And he gave this to the Hollow Knights as their reward for their service, and said, "Well, you've done well. Have a life." And so they decided to. And they went into like nation building, and they were like, "Okay, we have this land. Let's build a country. How do we do that? All we know is being a soldier, right?" So they started inviting other divine races to come live there and help them sort of figure out a government. And then as time went on and they lived with these other divine races, they started to realize that there were other things in life they were missing. Among those being the ability to procreate, to pass themselves along, to have a legacy. And so in the pursuit of that were the spires created. So the Hollow Legionnaires are kind of their way, the Hollow Knights' way of seeking this parenthood, of seeking a legacy, of seeking a way to pass on a bit of themselves into a new generation. So in a way, they're kind of they're kind of Pinocchios. You know, the Hollow Knights really want to be they just want to be real. They want to experience life, and so there's your lore dump. Makes so much more sense in the book. It made it seem like a horrible place to be because it's stuck between all sorts of bad guys and they're always under siege. But yeah, I mean, they are always under siege to a degree, but that's because it's so awesome to be there. Because it's a nice place. Everyone wants it. But that's also like the Hollow Legionnaires serve as kind of a standing army. So when you become a Hollow Legionnaire and you go off to adventure, you basically have one thing the Hollow Knights ask of you, which is if the valley is ever imperiled and you are called, you will come back to defend it. Most of the time, that's unnecessary because there's enough people there to defend it. And they're no slouches. You know, the Hollow Knights were Corion's sort of personal special forces. So they themselves are no slouches. Add, 30,000 Hollow Legionnaires or something like that. And they have quite a defensive force, plus the members of the other divine races that live there. But, you never know what might happen. You never know what might happen in supplements coming up soon. You never know. There might be some attention being paid down that road. We'll see. But, yeah, it's a nice place to be as long as you're not there in the middle of, a fight. So yeah, that's my in a nutshell version of the Hollow Legionnaires, and I would like to remind you, if you've not yet done so, to please go pick up the playtest of the current rules for them. And so Black Plague asked me, so which spire is mine? I don't know. Which one do you identify with? That's the key. Is so each spire grants like a particular type of ability, but those are based on kind of who you were or who you are, or like what role you would serve militarily. So let's break it down here real quick because I've got it all built in here. So if you go and you download those playtest rules, it's got the breakdown of each legion's traits, and the ability that you get with them, and so your legion is sort of determined by your sort of view towards life. Sometimes your view towards battle, and sometimes your view towards views, if that makes sense. So your, like for example, the Mithril Spire Legionnaires are staunch in their beliefs, quick to judge others that step outside those boundaries, slow to condemn others without proof. So they're very lawful good types, right? Like, this is how it is. There's right, there's wrong, there's black, there's white. Done, period. End of statement. I'm not going to condemn you unless I know that you've stepped into the wrong. But there is a very clear delineated right and wrong, and you're not going to sway me from that. If that's the personality you want to explore, that's your screen. So, no, Sebastian, if you download the playtest material, it's a rework. So the question was, will they be changed compared to how they appear in the Skylands Player's Guide? Yes. We are reworking it. A lot of the Many of the core things, like all the core things that make a Hollow Legionnaire, are still there. We're not changing any of them. We're changing a little bit about how some of it functions, in part to balance them out amongst themselves a little better, but also to reflect that each spire being a sub race as opposed to being one class. The way they were, or one race, the way they were presented in the 5e Player's Guide was just one race, and then you would take a feat, or you could take a feat that would give you a spire. And I just felt that because the spires are so fundamentally tied into who they are, I think that would be better conveyed as sub races. But in doing so, that also gave us some opportunities to resolve a few things. If you look at all the Hollow Legionnaire art, you can see there's kind of a glow to them. They have this spectral appearance. They're all sort of just like monochrome. Like they have the details of face and hair sometimes, but there's no gradation to it. It's just one color, and there's like there's a bit of a luminescence to them. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we steered into that a little bit and gave them some system impacting elements about their appearance. So now, for example, the way it's written in the playtest anyway, is that your exposed skin is translucent, glows faintly, casting dim light in a 5-foot radius. You make dex stealth checks at disadvantage, and anything viewed through your exposed skin is considered lightly obscured. So, like, you can't... Where that really comes into play is mostly... Obviously, you're a light source, which is nice, but... especially for a species that doesn't have dark vision. But you can't hide something behind a Hollow Legionnaire. You can hide it behind their armor. But if they have exposed skin, you can't hide it behind it because you can see through them. I think that's funny. Realistically, that's in there because I think it's hilarious. But also just seems like, it's a ghost. It's a ghostly thing. Having them be this solid sort of fleshiness. I thought we had an opportunity to do something that was a little cooler and sets them apart a little bit more. What else did we do here? I did a little work to tweak the death mechanics, and so far I haven't seen a whole lot of feedback specifically about that in the playtest, because there was an ability that was across the board for Hollow Legionnaires regarding advantage on death saves, that we sort of scooted into specifically the Adamantine Spire. And that was partially just because I felt that giving that across the board, especially with some of the other features that you get, I thought that maybe that was just a little too much. And it really felt like that gave the Adamantine Spire something to set it apart. So, but so far, I haven't, nobody's like, sent me like horrible responses and like, how dare you take away advantage on death saves. I haven't gotten any of that yet. So, yay. Having said that, though, we are still soliciting feedback, so please download the playtest, give it a whirl, and let us know what you think. So, yeah. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Okay. I think that has gotten everybody's questions about Hollow Legionnaires. And there's this whole other, like, I can talk about Hollow Legionnaires literally till 2021. I promise you I can. But I thought maybe we would touch a little bit on the other side of that playtesty coin, which is the Gorgard. And I can't remember who I got it from. One piece of playtest feedback that we got seemed to tie the material that was in the playtest together in a way that I didn't intend for. So if that person is watching, sorry for my miscommunication. I was not trying to imply that the Gorgard is a class that is specifically intended to be played with Hollow Legionnaires. It just happened to be prudent to release that at the same time. And Gorgards, one of the things we're trying to do with all the classes that will be appearing in Yugman's Guide is we're going through a lot of the old D20 material and reimagining a lot of these prestige classes that were used and trying to figure out, okay, so how do we reimagine these in the 5e sort of schema, I guess, for lack of a better word. See, somebody fucking brought up Warforged, and now I'm saying schema. But yeah, so one of those that we looked into was the Gorgard, and I think I've got it pumped in here. If I don't, we can build it together. Subclasses. I do not have it in here. Would you look at that? But as you can tell, I have in fact run a Tal'Dorei campaign. I think you can see that, right? Is it showing up as my big old... Nope, my big old melon in the way? So much lag. So much lag. Yeah, I've ran a Tal'Dorei campaign. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and add a Gorgard in here. Alright, Kiltman, have a good night. Thank you for popping in, and thank you for your questions and comments. Yeah, I figured that I would do this stream. Yoda just pointed out, for those of you not watching the chat, that everyone and their mother was poking about Happy New Year right now. I figured this would be a good time for the specific reason that people would be, nursing hangovers and chilling out and relaxing and probably at just about the right level of mental engagement to hang back and listen to me yap ceaselessly about Scarred Lands for a little while. So I think I'm going to throw in this archetype just in case somebody decides they want to play one in one of my forthcoming games. Now I will probably have to fix it at some point. But so this is... Everybody put on your learning hats. This is your chance to learn something. If you know how to do this on D&D Beyond, while I'm doing this, think up some questions and type them in the chat. So you go to create new subclass. Obviously, we're building the Gorgard as a fighter, so we're going to create a fighter subclass. And we're going to create it from scratch. Now, I've got everything basically set up in the playtest document, so I'm just going to do a lot of copy and pasting, which will also theoretically make it easier for me to focus on what you all are asking me. Okay, I saw a question pop up in chat. What was that? May I ask if orcs will be covered in Vigil Watch? I would love to know more. Sort of. So orcs are mentioned in Vigil Watch, but not quite to the extent that the Ironbred and the Manticore are. And the reason for that is that, well, it's twofold. One, the orcs are pretty well covered in existing material, but also Vigil Watch focuses on specific settlements as opposed to a race. So it just so happens that there are two settlements that are very centric to the one of the Ironbred, one of the Manticore. The chapters of Vigil Watch, I don't think I'm telling anybody anything that's not been discussed publicly, but the chapters of Vigil Watch are the Toe Islands, which is part of the Blood Sea, the Yorling of Mansk, which will cover orcs. It's a human-run settlement in the Kelder Steppes. Kelder Steppes, I believe. Yeah. It's run by a barbarian warlord, but there are a lot of orcs there, and so there's a lot of discussion about orc culture, about the rift between orcs that have participated in the Divine Truce and orcs who are unredeemed. But that's not the focal point of that book. There will also be some orc NPCs and creature stat blocks in there. So yeah, I mean, I guess not to completely contradict myself, but yeah, orcs will be covered, just not center stage. But they're definitely given some attention in the Yorling of Mansk chapter, and then the rest are Leone, which is the capital of the Manticore Confederacy, the Iron Citadel, which is the mobile nation state of the Ironbred, the Festering Fields, which is a corrupted land teeming with undead in southern Gelsbad, and Lokiel. Those are the areas that will be covered. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, we've got our Gorgard built. Now we're going to add some class features. So to add a class feature, pretty simple. You just click Add a Class Feature. And so for the Gorgard, the Gorgards are in the initial lore, they originate near the Fangs Fall Peninsula, and they are often used as gladiators. So that's where a lot of their abilities come from, is this sort of gladiator origin. But the way the Gorgards are created is that they are exposed to titanic corruption from the Titan Garak, who's was the glutton, and his teeth make up the Fangs Fall Mountains. And a lot of the times the enamel of his teeth are used in like construction and buildings there and whatnot. So the Gorgards take in some of that corruption and gain some abilities from it but also gain some gluttony. So their first martial archetype feature is Ravenous Hunger, which gives them aspects of Garruk. They require twice as much food as a typical humanoid. They're immune to diseases and other negative effects related to eating raw, rotten, or otherwise dangerous food. But it doesn't extend to poisons. You can still poison them. Someone had asked about that in the feedback. Like, why wouldn't you give them poison immunity? And it's something I'm rolling around in my head. My thoughts on it, though, are that the Gore Guards are created to fight as gladiators, right? Like, this is not something that's necessarily done. It's not that you don't necessarily choose the path. You might not too. But it's not necessarily done entirely of your own volition or entirely under your own power. Okay, so I would think from like a practical perspective, if I was going to make a giant killing machine that could eat my face, I might want to be able to poison that thing. That was my reasoning and my understanding of the reasoning in the initial material. Alright, so we need to add a modifier. They get immunity to disease. We'll save that. Save it again and go back to the Gore Guard. You're going to add another class feature. Gorax Gnashers. Grr. I don't know. What do you think? What's your thoughts, chat? What are your thoughts on immunity to disease and not poison? Would you, if you were creating a gladiator servant or a gladiator for entertainment, would you want to be able to poison them? I would. Just throwing that out there. Okay. Alright, so their second feature is Gorax Gnashers. Starting at 3rd level, infusions of Gorax blood cause your teeth to become larger and thicker, allowing you to bite through flesh and bone with ease. When you take the attack action, attack with a melee weapon, you can use a bonus action to bite a target within 5 feet. Your bite deals 1d6 piercing damage and you are proficient with it. That's fun. You get a bite attack. So, who doesn't love a bite attack? So this is one way you can add a weapon, but it doesn't. It works very. It's very finicky and very specific about how it works. So 1d6 piercing damage, right? Yeah. Oops. There we go. So hopefully you can see the screen well enough that you can kind of see what I'm doing with that. And sorry, I'm not. One of the skills that I've been working on since I've begun streaming is to be able to talk while I'm like typing and clicking stuff, and I'm not great at it, so I apologize. So yeah, this is a feature that I love. I love the idea that as you're getting these infusions of blood, and that's one of the things that I guess uh, coming into um, Scarred Lands from a design space, I find very exciting. Right? Is there's a lot of narrative weight behind your choices for your subclasses because a lot of them require um, a certain level of in character activity. Gorguards receive infusions of Titanic blood. Now, that's frequently done through this particular group in Fangsfell, but Gorax blood's kind of all over the place on the Fangsfell Peninsula, so you could just decide you wanted to go that route and go pursue that. And that puts some story weight behind, like, well, okay, well, why are you this thing? Because I pursued this thing. Let's see. Sebastian says, I like separation. Immune to disease makes sense and seems like a natural aspect. Poison is more artificial. That was my reasoning too. Yeah. Right. I agree. And the new original. Hi, the new original. Thank you for joining us. Poison and diseases are very overlooked things in D&D. Yes, they are. Less so in Scarred Lands. And part of the reason for that is because there's a lot of focus on the damage to the environment and the way that that damage manifests itself through weather patterns, through the inclusion of various species and Titan spawn. I can't believe I didn't mention this, but we did have the Creature Collection Kickstarter this past year, and it's now on BackerKit, so you can head over and snatch yourself a copy of that and pre-order. I'll grab you a link real quick here. And that covers some of these creatures. And one of the sort of creature design aspects that you'll see as you're looking through sort of some of the iconic monsters of Scarred Lands. There's a lot of like just awesome Titan spawn, right? And very cool sort of nasty critters, you know, your blood reapers and hornsaw unicorns and things like that. But there's also a large amount of like plants and like what would have been considered vermin in earlier editions that are just like these really cool setting pieces that kind of show how corrupted and horrible the land itself has become. And so that creates a more frequent use of things like poison and disease. Now, where that starts to become a bit of a design challenge, and it's something I'm contending with right now, actually, a couple things I'm working on, is 5th edition. I think this is part of the reason why in a lot of 5e you don't see a lot of poison and disease, because there's a lot of characters that have a lot of options to just kind of hand wave it away. So what do you do to circumvent that? Right? How do you get around that without it turning into some weird escalation of complicated interactions of the rules? So that's what interests me. How do we find, like, where's the sweet spot? Is there a descriptor we add? Is there a condition we add? What's the most elegant way to say that a disease is especially virulent? You know, things like that. Yeah, exactly. It was kind of exactly what I was talking about. The new original is making sure it's not too granular, and I think so far in the material we've released so far for Scarred Lands, we've done a really good job of balancing that out. And I think some of it too is represented in optional rules. There's a rule. This is not quite the same thing because it's not exactly environmental, but it's along the same lines. There's a system or a story element in Scarred Lands called Mesos Bane. And what that refers to is the Titan Mesos, who is known as the Sire of Sorcery. When they were defeated, they were ripped asunder, shredded to pieces, and scattered into the cosmos. And they now sort of live in the ambient sorceress energies of the world. And so when you cast a spell, there will often be a accompanying effect. Could be a release of light, could be a release of heat, could be a release of sound. Just a little thing. And there's optional rules in the Scarred Lands Player's Guide for including some system impact for having that active. It's the kind of thing that I think is super cool, that I love to see in games I'm running, but I understand why somebody might want to leave by the wayside. So I think that there is something to be said for having some sort of optional toolbox stuff there for the more granular, dangerous environment stuff, you know? And I do think there's something to be said for representing some of that in creature form, you know? Instead of saying, well, you know, this jungle has this modifier under this condition at this time, you just give the jungle a creature stat block, which is one way that I think Scarred Lands does a very good job of tackling that. And it's another place where I would love to take some credit for that, but that's been before I got here. Smarter minds than I came up with that approach, and I think it's a good approach, and I think it carries over very well into the 5th edition setup. So yeah, threading that needle is a challenge, and it's a challenge that I look forward to. But I also am a fan personally of having tables, something that you can quick reference. That way you don't have to always be like, okay, you're walking through, you know, just to give you an example, you're walking through the Hornsaw Forest. The Hornsaw Forest is corrupted in X, Y, and Z ways. Instead of having expecting the game master to keep in mind the X, Y, and Z all the time, having a table they can roll on and say, well, how's that manifesting today? I think is cool. And that's something else that the Scarred Lands lends itself towards that maybe some other like dangerous environment settings might not, because the Scarred Lands does have an element of chaos to its danger, an element of chaos to its corruption that is maybe absent elsewhere. If that makes sense. Oh, Yoden, let's see. Full disclosure, I was in favor of giving them poison resistance in the feedback. Oh, okay. I mean, I came from the standpoint I thought disease immunity was only from eating raw food. No, they just are immune to it. Yeah. Yes, new original, exactly. Percentile dice to dictate environmental dangers, and very much so. And I think you'll see a lot of that stuff. If you look at like the Spiragos trilogy that's up on Drive-Thru RPG right now, some of that stuff works in already. And as we expand our 5e materials, you'll see a lot more of that coming into play. Because they're not static environments, right? There are very few places where the weather is the same every day. There are very few places where the danger is the same every day. You're going to have a different experience. And you can, I feel the need to type this out every single time I include a table in a book, because I feel like if I don't type it out, somebody's going to not understand this. Just because there's a table there doesn't mean you have to randomize it. If there's something that you see on that table that you're like, that's going to work for this story, just grab it off the table and use it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think sometimes maybe people don't engage the table that way. And that strikes me as a little weird, but so I just spell it out for them. Because why not? It won't cost me a few words. Oh, and Seabass, yeah. I assume your shipping soon, I hope, statement is in regards to Creature Collection 5e, and me too. Me too. I sprung for the fancy pants leather-bound, vegan leather-bound edition because I so rarely get physical books anymore. But that one I wanted to have the real pretty show off one. Wanted the showpiece. Okay, so while I'm sitting here jaw-jacking, I could be continuing to do this. Yeah, absolutely new original. Absolutely. I agree 100%. Yeah, completely. And those are everything that new original and everything you guys are talking about in chat right now, or you folks, I should say, I'm working on that one, are talking about in chat right now in terms of using dangerous environments to force the players to engage with the world, to have it be lived in, being able to unload the some of the prep work of the DM through tables, all that stuff. Whoa, I almost knocked over my water. All that stuff, I think, is vital and is very in the forefront of our minds as we're rolling out new Scarred Lands 5e material. So Corpulence, Happy New Year, Fardnath. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing today? So yeah, Corpulence. This is the 7th level feature for the Gorguard, and this is, for me, the fun stuff. Gorak's blood starts to grow in you. You gain 50% of your body weight, and you grow obscenely fat. Your strength constitution scores increase by 1 to a maximum of 20. your dex score decreases by 1. At 15th level, you gain another 25% of your body weight, and another tweak to your strength, constitution, and dex. So I dig this a lot because this is very setting heavy stuff. It really plays into the fact that you start taking on this corruption of the Titan whose power you're drawing from. New original, I look forward to hearing how it goes. I love this setting. I really do. And I've loved it since Creature Collection 1 came out for D20. You know what I mean? It is a blast. It is a really cool world. Just so much fun, so rich. And the stuff that we're rolling out in Vigil Watch and Yugman's Guide this year, I really think is going to set it off in a way that is going to give players and game masters tools to explore this world and engage with it maybe in a way that hasn't been there before. You know, because our main focus right now, the thing that interests me the most is that level 1 to level 10 group of players, people that are just now engaging the Scarredlands maybe for the first time, or you're starting off your new Scarredlands story, and you're in this world that's so rich and so full of all of these dangerous things and fantastical things and interesting things. Pitching material toward that, toward how those people interact with the world, that's where my interests lie the most, and that's really what we're focusing on with Vigil Watch and Yugman's Guide. Coming soon. Alright, so what was I doing? I was adding the ability score modifiers that you get. Did that wrong. So yeah, in case you're just tuning in, I'm adding this stuff in D&D Beyond so that as we do some more streaming with Scarredlands, I'll be able to have an overlay where people will be able to engage with the characters' sheets and view the material. Right there on Twitch in the overlay. Alright, so we're looking at Dex +1, Con +1. Strength +1, Con +1. So again, some of this stuff can get a little on the D&D Beyond side when you're adding in your things. Some of it can get a little bit tedious, for lack of a better word, because you have to go through and break everything out piece by piece to get the bonuses in, but it's really nice at the table. And for example, if you are using D&D Beyond to manage your campaign. And you're the DM and you have a shared campaign, everybody can use your homebrew. So, and everybody can use all the homebrew of everyone that is involved. So, you do the work once and now it's there for everyone. So we have to add another. Oh, now can we reduce it? Can we subtract? I don't think there's a way to subtract. Huh. Interesting. So yeah, I don't think there's a way to subtract the ability score in here. Oh, I bet there is bonus. Let's see. Nope. Nope. Yeah, that's funny. You can't really remove. You can't add a penalty. You can set base, but you don't know what the base is going to be. That's funny. So that would be something that you'd have to note and manually do down the road if you're doing that. So yeah, you can go through, you sort of add these features, as it were, and once they're all there, you can build a character and assume that subclass. Alright. So, while I'm building that out, thoughts on having your class features affecting your ability scores? What do you all think on that? Let's see, Corpulence is one of my favorites. It's more than a stat boost, comes with a flavor that sets it apart. Feels like a turning point for the subclass. It physically transforms the person in a way that immediately feel visually iconic. Yeah, and that's one of the things too, right? Like, we want every subclass to feel like it's not just another subclass. Like, it's not just another step. I don't want it to be. I want everything to stick out, and for when you take something, for it to have a very, very distinct flavor. And I don't know that that's always the case. In all of the subclasses that you see designed in 5e, I'll put it that way. Some of them can feel very samey, and I definitely do not want to see the Scarred Lands become samey in any way, shape, or form. Here's everybody's favorite, showboating. This is definitely one area where I'll be spending a little bit of dev time this next week or so. It is probably the clearest bit of feedback we've gotten from the playtest so far is that people don't like showboating. And it is admittedly underwhelming. You need to make some tweaks to it. So I like the idea of improvised weapons being proficient. I do see how it's definitely underwhelming. I think it needs some oomph to it. So I'm not going to plug that into the system side on this just yet, because I'm going to go through and tweak that later. I don't know what oomph. I'm open to oomph suggestions. Something else we can add. Maybe adding your charisma bonus to your melee damage or something like that, you know? Because the idea behind it is supposed to be that you're a gladiator, right? You're like a performer. So you're used to, like, you know, I can grab a bar stool and smack you over the head with it, and not only can I kick your ass in the process, but I can look awesome doing it. So, you know, I'm just spitballing ideas here. Charisma bonus, or you know, maybe even like a expertise situation with improvised weapons. You know, you get to add double your proficiency bonus or something like that. Something to give you a reason to pick up an improvised weapon, right? Because why would you? Even the damages aren't that great. And why would you make the damage better on a beer stein than on a short sword? Lots of intersections to think about there. I'll come back to showboating. It needs help. All right, so let's see here. Corpulence, one of my favorites. Oh yeah, we talked about that. I like it, especially it makes more impact for games like mine where we don't use methods that generate very high ability scores. I am a proponent of standard array. I know that we cannot make any sort of official character creation declaration because that's not part of the OGL. But I can tell you that in every game I run ever, I use standard array because I think it's fairest, and I think while there's a certain amount of I get like point by, and that's fine. I think that can get a little too crunchy for my tastes. I don't have anything against power gaming. I don't have anything against optimizing a build. But when your character's got a strength of 20 and an intelligence of 4, I need to question your motivations a little bit. And the same thing with dice rolls. Like, why would I let fate choose how good of a time we're going to have at the table in terms of like your base character abilities? You know what I mean? And features that change attributes, risky, but if well done, stands out. Yeah, I think that's true. And I wish I could take credit for how good this class is, but I didn't. I developed it, but I was not the writer on this particular subclass. Let's see. So the 15th level trait, you get insatiable. Gain supernatural fortitude from gorging yourself on food. If you spend 10 minutes eating or 30 pounds or more of organic matter, you regain the use of second wind or action surge feature. I think this one might need some rewording because it may have caused some confusion from folk. Part of the reason for this is so you can eat a bunch of food. Part of the reason for this is so you can rip your enemy's arm off and eat it. I just think it's funny. Again, maybe we might nix the once you use it, you can't use it again until you finish the long rest. Because you do need to spend 10 minutes to do it. But I think it's funny to rip someone's arm off and eat it. Or, like, you know, eat your fallen enemies to get power. You know. So, I'll leave that out of the system for the moment so I can go back in and tweak it. I mean, there's really nothing to add system-wise anyway. This doesn't affect your D&D sheet. I'm going to save changes there. And that brings us to our capstone feature, Hunger of the Glutton. I absolutely adore it. Starting at 18th level, you can inspire the hunger of Garruk in those near you. You use your action to let out a tremendous belch. Creatures within 30 feet of you must make a wisdom saving throw. And if they fail, they spend their actions for the next minute seeking out and devouring food. Target may repeat the saving throw at the end of each of their turns. Target will not endanger themselves while searching for food or act against their nature. For example, loyal companions will not attack one another over food. If you or your companions attack the target while they search for food, they have advantage on the saving throw. Once you've finished it, you cannot use it again until you finish the long rest. The one piece of feedback that I've gotten on this that absolutely, for my own edification, I need to note, obviously this should not affect creatures who don't need to eat. And because it's 5th edition, that probably needs to be spelled out clearly. So, but otherwise, yeah. So once you get all this stuff plugged into your D&D Beyond, then you save it. Make sure all your changes are saved. And then you can hop over to the page. Let's see. So you go to your Creations tab, go to My Homebrew Creations, type in your new class, and filter it. Bang, here we go. I didn't put the orders in right, but so yeah. If I would have put numbers on these to display them in the right order, we'd be in good shape. But all that's there. So now when you go into the D&D Beyond character builder, you have a way of building yourself out a Gorgard, if you followed the steps that I just walked through anyway. And you can do the same thing with anything that's in, like I said, in Scarred Lands or any 5e material. Some of it you'll have to do a little bit of experimenting with because one size does not fit all with this stuff, and D&D Beyond, certain functionalities are only programmed certain ways because that's what Wizards has used. You can put in feature requests, I think, for them, but I don't know how much traction that gets and how fast that gets addressed, or if it gets addressed. I don't know. Haven't tried it. But it's certainly enough to let you get yourself access to these sources and resources in what is probably the best character management platform out there right now. I'm going to mute for 2 seconds. I hate opening a soda on stream. It sounds like letting a bomb off. All right, so now that the display orders are proper, let's look at the Gorgard again. Yes, no, maybe. Did it work? Yeah, it worked. Hey, look at that. Display orders are proper. Woo! And so, once again, if you have feedback, ideas, want to just download the stuff and check it out, use it at your table, head over here. Link I'm sharing in the chat to pick up the playtest. There's going to be more rolling out basically every week, starting second or third week of January. We're going to be playtesting a whole bunch of stuff, so get in, ground floor, let us know what you think. I'm going to be wrapping things up here shortly, but if anybody has any last minute questions, please hop in the chat and let me know. So let's see here. We got RE Oomph. Charisma bonus sounds pretty good. Yeah, maybe some sort of bonus when surrounded by allies cheering you on, sort of like a reverse ferocious feat. That could be cool. Or even like a self-inspiration might be neat. You know what I mean? Like a bardic inspiration, but it only works on you. Or like you can draw it from people. Maybe. That might be cool. There's some options. There's some moves there. Yeah, I just think it needs. I think showboating for the Gorgard definitely needs a little bit of extra oomph. Yeah, I'll play with some of those ideas. I'll definitely play with some of those ideas this week, and you should too. Take them to your table. Try some things out along those lines and let me know how it comes up. You can find me when I'm not streaming here. I'm streaming over at Plastic Age Plays. I'm sure you've seen my name in the chat, but I stream there usually on Mondays. We're going to be off until next week. And then on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th Wednesday, if none of those are a holiday, we stream. At 8 p.m., streaming Extreme Drowis right now. That campaign is in its 3rd and final act. Once that wraps up, we will be streaming a Scarredlands stream. Actually have started running some session zeros for that Scarredlands stream. And if you support me over at my Patreon, you can see some of those and how they're coming together and how we are using D&D Beyond in that. And that's right there. You can also find me pretty much everywhere on the internet at Travis Legge, Legge. So yeah, check some of this stuff out. Download the things. Shoot me a tweet. Let me know how it's going. Share the links on your social media so your friends will play them. And thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with me. Last call for questions. I just want to also just again say thank you all very much for supporting Scarredlands, for supporting this Twitch channel. I do the scheduling and the program coordination here, so seeing it be a success is very heartwarming and very cool, and I appreciate it. It means a lot. And I want to wish everyone a happy, safe, prosperous, filled with natural 20s 2020. And I suppose with that, we'll probably wrap things up because I'm not seeing any more questions hopping into chat. One last reminder, do head over to Kickstarter and support Cults of the Blood Gods. You have about 15 days left. Also want to let you know, I will be, along with pretty much everybody from Onyx Path, will be at Midwinter in Milwaukee coming up here. I think it starts the 7th. So if you can make it up there, please do. I will be running Scarred Lands, just left, right, and center. I've got Scarred Lands running, I think, every day of the convention. I think most of them I'm running 2. Momo. Which one is Momo? I don't think I've ever been to Momo. Where is it? I would love to go. So yeah, I'll be there. We have our big old Atlanta. Yeah, yes, I would love to go. I don't go to that one. I've never been there, I should say. I don't know if Eddie goes or not. I'll have to look into it. Maybe I'll try to go this year. We'll see. I would love to do more con appearances this year. I did a lot of cons this last year. It was a lot of fun. I love shaking babies and kissing hands. So it's nice to meet people in person. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. Please go out, spread the good word about Scarred Lands. Tell everybody to play it twice. And one more thing, almost forgot. The New Year New Game sale will be starting tomorrow at Drive Through RPG. Among the things that will be on sale during that sale, I have collected all of Vengeance of the Shunned into one bundle, which we will be turning on tomorrow. So if you haven't gotten on board for that yet, you will have a great opportunity starting tomorrow morning. If you've already bought some of them, but not all of them, you'll be able to pick up the rest of them at a discounted price. Just keep your eyes peeled for that. I will be sharing that link on all of my social media first thing tomorrow. Yeah. So with that, I bid you all a happy new year. We'll see you again real soon. Bye.